What's going on, Guitar Heroes? It's Nathan here. I'm at Soundcheck, a rehearsal space here in Nashville, and we are getting to it for the 2025 touring season. Now, this year is a little interesting because we're actually starting off in Australia, and we are using our B rig. Let me take you through what we're using and how it's all connected Helix-wise. First things first, updating is done. Here's our B-Rig rack. That's my B-Rig Helix. Rebuilding presets. I'm gonna take you through how I set up Helix in HX Edit. So you can see over in my set list, I've got Factory 1, Factory 2, 2022, 2023, 23, 24. Here's how I set up my sets. I like to go alphabetical. So all these songs, Angels, After All the Bars Are Closed, Back to Blue, Beautiful As You, Beer Can't Fix, so on and so forth. And I like to leave a slot in between each so that if a song comes up like this new one that we just put in the set last fall, Don't Want to Dance, I can throw it in and it's still alphabetical. Now, this is for the B-Rig and this is for this one-off show, so I will probably end up redoing a set list and get rid of these templates and go to 2025 over here. It's my B-Rig controller. This was a leftover expression pedal from a couple years ago, and I'm also using this Dunlop Mini X expression pedal. I honestly only use it for one song when I have to do some wah stuff, but that's what I use it for, so I can have a dedicated volume and an expression pedal for whatever else. And I have this set up in snapshot mode. You can see I've got, for each snapshot, I've got a rhythm, verse 2, which might have been just a random different tone, bridge, chorus. But I can click on the bank and I can see all the tunes, like I said, in alphabetical order. Let's go to that Don't Want to Dance. For these ones, I've got the intro, there's a verse 1 rhythm part, a big chorus part, and the solo. I actually don't have to tap dance too much during the show. We receive all our program changes and control changes for the snapshots via Midi from an Ableton rig that syncs us up with light and time code and all that kind of stuff. So I very rarely have to actually do anything unless Ableton goes down. Then I have to do the tap dance. So in order to set up the Helix like that, you have to go into your globals, global settings, and under foot switches, I'm in 8 snapshot preset mode. And if I was in DOM mode, if I switched over, it would be 10 switches. So that's how I do it. You could do it different ways. I know a couple other guys use like preset snap because they don't have as many snapshots, but I like 8 snapshots. This is Michael Rhodes.
Hello.
Michael, why don't you tell us about yourself and what you do here?
Yeah, so I am a guitar tech here and kind of oversee what all's going on with these racks. This is actually our B rig, so it's not as large as footprint of as the A rig.
And we're taking this to Australia in 4 weeks?
Yes. Yeah, this will be freighted as well as the, this is just a rented rack from Spectrum for, it really just houses our I/O and our wireless.
And what's the signal flow for this guy?
So the wireless obviously comes in here.
Right. What type of wireless are we using here?
This is the Shure Accient, the AD4Q.
Okay.
And this is 4 individual channels of wireless per unit. So we use kind of the 2 per player.
Okay, it's like a main and a backup or alternating?
Yeah, so the way I use it is I just alternate between, if I'm handing one off, the next one can be ready.
Okay.
And I can confirm that it's, you know, giving signal and I'm metering before I hand it off, so I know it's 100% correct.
So you're running 2 different frequencies then?
Yes, they're two different frequencies here per player.
But for like Esteban, we use the same frequency for all guitars?
Yeah, and then he uses kind of his second channel as a spare, so which we've had to use especially like in Phoenix, for example, when it was just super crowded in the air, and this one just started getting interference in the middle of the show, and he was easily able to switch over to that. So yeah, a little bit about the signal flow here is it comes in through the packs into this. Out of this is, on this specific rig, is coming out of here through a loom and into here, which is going into the Radial, which will come back around here.
So it goes into these radial units here, and these are the JX42s. I have no idea what that means.
So we're using the JX42s. Basically, it's 4 inputs, 4 separate inputs, and you can select A and B amp out, which we only use A.
Right.
And it's...
Then that's because we only have one Helix for each player.
Yes, correct. So it's coming in, here's channel 1, channel 2.
So in those, that's from the 2 different wireless units?
Yep.
Okay.
That is the jack out, and then it comes out of here into the Helix front panel, and then from there we are using the AES out on the Helix. And what that means is typically you would use a left-right analog XLR. Right. This is just one XLR that carries a digital signal to this Digico SD mini rack. And what this is doing, it's basically accepting all that information from the Helixes and a couple other things we have over here, and it's turning it into fiber so that it can run long distances of digital audio over to our audio department, is that's where it gets patched in.
And it gets split digitally between monitors and front of house, or?
It's not really split, but that's just how they accept it, and then it's just a fiber loop. So
how do you like working with the AES and the digital as opposed to like an analog signal flow?
There's really not a large difference, but I think the noise floor is a little less, and it's just a little more reliable. Okay. From what we've found. So.
And these guys down here are just battery backups?
Yeah, so this is a UPS battery backup, correct? It ensures that if we lose power from audio, or what in this case is going to be locally provided in Australia, it's basically like taking that power con out of the back and the rig still works seamlessly.
Work. So if there's like our electricity gets cut off, the main thing is it's protecting the equipment so that it doesn't get a sharp cut off. Okay.
For sure, yeah. And then same here, this is just a smaller UPS, but if that power is interrupted, it automatically kicks over to that, which we put these in all of our racks, and cool. All the backline racks have them, as well as audio. A necessity for us.
Yeah. When it comes to actually getting program changes and patch changes, we're not actually doing any tap dancing on our control units. They're there as a backup for us, and we might use an expression for volume or some other effect, but it's just in case that our Ableton rig, which sends us time code to go along with the songs and the lights and all that kind of stuff. But when we get Midi from the Ableton rig, how does it hit our Helixes?
So the way we are doing it is pretty much over one Cat5 cable, all the way from the playback world over there. In this case of the B rig, we've got a pair of Cat5s, one main and one spare, that patch into the back of this rack. They go to this managed network switch here. I don't know if you can see back in there, but each port is programmed specifically to do one thing. There's one coming in, and then there's a couple ports that are programmed for RTP MIDI. I believe it's this orange one that goes to our iConnectivity Mio XL. And then from there, on the back of this, it's DIN outputs, in and outs as well. And then from there, it just drops down to the DIN in, MIDI in of the Helixes.
Okay, so it comes over this fiber cable from Ableton, goes into this thing. Yep. And then from here, it goes out into this. Yep. And this turns it from a fiber connection. Obviously, I don't know anything about anything here, but to our standard like MIDI cable.
Yeah. And that's what all these Mios do. And in this case, like our A rig is fiber, but this case it's just Cat5 coming from playback. Yeah, pretty much all the rigs here have some sort of Mio in there, whether it's the XL or the XM, which they're awesome. because you can now run, instead of running MIDI over XLR, you can now run a single Cat5 and have all these ports, which, yeah, very cool piece of gear, and really not that expensive in the grand scheme of things.
So you'd recommend doing this for anybody building a rig like this?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would use like a Mio XM for sure. Those are like $250.
Right.
And Oracle is the kind of like the web interface you program those on.
Oh, so it's completely programmable. You can make it do whatever you need it to do.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And I'll show you over here, another cool thing we're doing is we can plug our iPads into this. Ooh. And I'll show you that.
All right, so over here in your, oh hey, there's Esteban, my guitar tech. All right, so over here, this is our B rig, your B rig for this setup. It takes all of this A rig and compacts it down to a little Pelican.
Yep. And I want to show you just a little bit of what we're doing in the iPad to make our lives as the techs just a little bit easier, and make sure that when we hand the guitar off, it's 100% working, not only the tuning, but jacks and everything. The first thing is, these are all my Helix patches. Obviously we get the program changes from Ableton during the show, but say for whatever reason that glitches or never does, but
in case
it does, we can now basically control the show from here.
Right.
And I'm familiar enough with these patches to do that. So when I hit mute, I'm the middle Helix there.
Josh, it went to mute. Cool.
Yeah. And then I'll do a couple changes you can see on the screen there.
Yep. That's awesome. So that's all being controlled by the iPad.
Correct, yes. That's all being controlled by just all these little buttons here. And I've got my snaps there as well.
That's awesome. And for Josh Reedy, he doesn't have as many snapshots as like I have on
Yeah, there's a couple songs where like we use probably 4 or 5, and that's why I only have those on here, but we don't really go past that.
But you could set this up to have 8 snapshots on.
Oh, totally.
Cool.
Yeah. And here is kind of my main, like, this is where
It's where you live during the show?
Yeah, like this is kind of the buttons I use the most. So this is my in-ear mix.
Okay.
This is controlling macros on the monitor console to where I've got an XLR output for my tuners.
Okay.
When I hit this button here,
tuner.
My ears switch to exactly what's coming out of this, so that it's a pretty seamless transition in my ears. Like in the past I've done, you can have a little pocket amp or whatever here and plug in, but then if something happens in the show, you're missing that.
Yeah.
That's kind of the main 2 buttons I use throughout the show. Now, this RF1 and RF2 is the Dante out of the Shure Axion. What that means is I can hear exactly what's coming off of the pack that's on the guitar before it hits the Helix.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I can now monitor, like, okay, if there's a buzz going on, I can pinpoint, is that me or not, within a second.
Right.
Helix output is the AES output of the Helix.
The Helix, yeah.
Yeah, so I can hear that soloed in my ears as well.
That's awesome. So you have multiple ways of troubleshooting in case anything is going funky with the rig.
Exactly. These big green buttons here are controlling the Radial GX42 over there.
Okay.
So if you look over here, if you look at that top one there, 1 should be flashing, 2, and then back on. And that's all done through the Mio XL. So another workflow I have here is, say the guitar player has pack 1 out on the stage. Well, I have pack 2 on. I'm gonna disable that so it's not going to the Helix.
Right.
I go to RF2, turn my pack on, and I can hear what's coming out of the pack before I hand it off. So that's really a helpful thing to have. And then the last thing is these presets. So we use these pretty much only in rehearsals. These are presets on the actual Mio itself. So what this is doing is filtering what is coming out of the DIN outputs.
So
if
that's
that makes
like
sense.
filtering MIDI channels,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
So with MIDI, there's 16 channels, and we're each assigned a different channel on our Helixes. Like I think I'm channel 6.
Exactly.
And so if I am in rehearsal and I'm doing some programming in HX Edit, and they start playback on a different song, it would switch automatically.
Right, and if you haven't saved, then there goes all your work.
Yeah.
So during that time, the guitar player, whoever it may be, Reedy or Nate, will come over here and say, "Hey, can I get my program changes turned off?" Basically,
Right.
and that's all that's doing is muting or
incoming-
filtering that
the incoming channel. Okay, that's really cool.
Yes, and on this preset, it's only filtering out your specific channel.
Right.
On this, it's only filtering out Reedy's channel.
Okay.
When you go to none, it's just blocking everything.
Everything. So we can plug away at trying to find the perfect overdrive sound without having to deal with, like, if they're changing keyboard program changes and testing that sort of thing.
Exactly, which, you know, they're always working over there on Ableton. We're always working over here on tones. So this is a very helpful thing during rehearsals.
It is very, very helpful. I've definitely experienced a couple times where I feel like I've dialed in the perfect guitar tone and then it just disappears.
Yes. Didn't save it, so. So that's
awesome.
that's that.
Well, thanks for taking us through this little signal flow walkthrough. What's the name of your company again?
So my company, and we also build this, and the B-Rig package is LPS, Live Performance Systems. So we did the B-Rig back in, I believe, August, and then the A-Rig was back in 2022.
Okay.
And the A-Rig's got just a little more features and more things like this that you don't necessarily need in a
Yeah, and we've got, like, in the A-Rig, we actually have a backup Helix for each player and all that kind of stuff. We're redundant to the next degree. In addition to Thomas Red, what other clients have you guys worked with?
We just finished up a playback build for Kane Brown.
Cool.
And it was kind of like a double wide workstation that kind of looks like this, but it was a main stage as well for digital key sounds and some vocal processing too. So just cool little things like that, just incorporating, you know, luxuries that make our lives as techs way easier. So
that's awesome. Well, thanks for doing this. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
High five.
Thank you.
So that's basically it for how I set up the Helix to run with the show. It's pretty fun to work with a great team of techs here to get everything going, and I can't wait to get on the road and play some shows this year. We will see you on the internet and see you on the road this summer. Bye.